What if everything you've been taught about success is a lie? What if being kind, honest, and hardworking isn't what brings reward, but what gets you left behind? Imagine this. You're sitting in a boardroom, or maybe a quiet office space. You've stayed late for months, you've sacrificed weekends, you've supported your team, always played fair, and avoided the drama. And then, in a single announcement, the promotion you dreamed of is handed to someone else. Someone louder, more aggressive, less honest. Someone who plays the game differently. Your heart sinks. You smile because that's what's expected. But something inside you cracks. Not just because you didn't win, but because you did everything right. And it still wasn't enough. This is not a rare story. It's the silent experience of millions, honest workers, ethical leaders, kind-hearted dreamers, who quietly watch the ruthless rise. The manipulators, the charmers, the ones who don't hesitate to bend the truth or step over others. It's happening in boardrooms and classrooms, politics and startups, families and friendships. And maybe, just maybe, it's happened to you. So here's the question. Why do the worst people seem to succeed? Not once, not occasionally, but over and over again. Is the world broken, or is this simply how the game was always meant to be played? The truth is harsh, but liberating. The world doesn't reward goodness. It rewards those who understand power. And that changes everything. We grow up fed on a diet of moral fables, stories where the good guy always wins, where truth and justice prevail, where patience is a virtue and sacrifice is holy. But those stories are designed to comfort, not to prepare. They are narratives meant to build compliant citizens, not empowered individuals. And when you carry those beliefs into a world fueled by competition, strategy, and dominance, you don't become a hero. You become prey. Psychologists call it the just world fallacy, the belief that life is inherently fair, that good things happen to good people and bad things to bad people. It's an illusion that keeps you playing a losing game, waiting for karma to do what only strategy, power, and courage can actually achieve. Let's be clear. This is not a call to become heartless. It's a call to wake up. Because while you've been hesitating, questioning yourself, seeking validation, overthinking, the power-hungry have been moving. They don't wait for fairness. They don't ask for permission. They know something most people are too afraid to admit. The game isn't fair, and it never was. And here's where things get even more uncomfortable. This isn't a glitch in the system. It is the system. Throughout history, we've seen the same pattern. From the ruthless kings of empires to the cutthroat CEOs of modern corporations, those who rise to the top often share a single trait. Not brilliance, not talent, but ruthlessness without hesitation. That doesn't mean they're evil. It means they're playing by rules that others deny exist. This doesn't just apply to politics or business. It applies to relationships, creative careers, even self-worth. If you are always waiting for others to give you what you've earned, you will always live in disappointment. Because the world does not deliver justice. It delivers consequences to those who act and silence to those who wait. There is a hidden game being played around you, a game of power, a game of perception, a game of decisiveness, and those who succeed have either learned its rules or instinctively mastered them. But here's the twist. This isn't about becoming someone you're not. This is about reclaiming the parts of you that have been suppressed, your assertiveness, your boldness, your strategic mind, your will to act without fear. The parts of you that were trained to sit down, to shrink, to be nice instead of powerful. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this dilemma better than most. He saw that morality, as we know it, is often just a story told by the powerless to comfort themselves. In his words, in individuals, insanity is rare, but in groups, parties, nations, and epochs, it is the rule. We live in a culture that teaches you to play nice while quietly rewarding those who don't. And as long as you live by someone else's moral blueprint, without ever questioning it, you will always be outplayed by those who stopped believing in the illusion. The goal isn't to become a monster. The goal is to stop being prey. So ask yourself, how much longer are you willing to play a game that keeps you small? Because the first step to power is seeing the game for what it really is. If this truth hits hard, it's meant to. If it stirs something in you, some quiet fire that's been burning under the surface, then you're exactly where you need to be. And if you want to keep going deeper, into the real rules of power, the psychology behind success, and how to rise without losing your soul, then support this journey. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment. Your voice gives this work life, and your presence here means more than you know. Now, here's a quick question to get your mind thinking and to invite you into the conversation. Question: you witness someone at work taking credit for your idea and being praised for it. What would you do? And more importantly, why? Drop your answer in the comments. Let's start a real conversation. Ready to see what Nietzsche really meant about power and morality? Then don't miss part 2. It only gets deeper from here. There is a war that rages quietly inside every one of us. A war between two moralities, two worldviews that shape how we think, how we act, and ultimately how we live. This war is not new. It's ancient, primal, and largely invisible. And until you become conscious of which morality is directing your choices, you will never fully understand why you feel torn between who you are and who the world has told you to be. Friedrich Nietzsche, never one to shy away from uncomfortable truths, named these two forces: master morality and slave morality. These aren't just abstract concepts. They are the hidden engines behind how people define good and evil, power and weakness, freedom and submission. They explain why some people rise effortlessly through life, while others, perhaps equally capable, remain trapped in a cycle of self-doubt, hesitation, and quiet resentment. Master morality is the morality of the creators, the bold, the self-defining. It begins from within. The individual does not ask, is this right by society's standards, but instead, is this right by my values, by my will? Those who live by master morality measure good not by compliance or sacrifice, but by strength, creativity, courage, and the ability to act without apology. In this framework, pride is not a sin, it is a virtue. Power is not dangerous, it is natural. Life is not something to be endured, it is something to be shaped. Slave morality, in contrast, was born in the hearts of those who felt powerless. It emerged as a survival strategy for the oppressed, the conquered, the restrained. Lacking the means to assert their will outwardly, they turned inward and reframed their suffering as virtue. Humility, obedience, meekness, patience, these became the good. Meanwhile, ambition became dangerous, power, evil. Those who were strong were to be feared or condemned, and thus a moral system was born, one that doesn't elevate greatness but sanctifies submission. The genius and the danger of Nietzsche's insight lies in the way this framework still operates today, beneath the surface of modern life. We live in a world that outwardly champions kindness and fairness, but in practice rewards dominance, vision, and boldness. Yet most people, especially those raised in institutions that value conformity, still operate from slave morality, without ever realizing it. You see it in the quiet resignation of the employee who always does what's asked but never asks for more. You see it in the artist who waits for permission to express themselves authentically. You see it in the person who dims their light, apologizes for their success, or downplays their ideas so they won't be seen as arrogant. These aren't acts of humility, they're symptoms of internalized powerlessness. We've inherited a morality that makes us afraid of our own strength. Now let's be clear. Nietzsche did not argue that kindness is weakness or that compassion should be discarded. What he warned against was a morality that praises weakness because it is weakness. A morality that teaches us to shrink ourselves in the name of goodness. A morality that punishes the strong, not because they harm, but because they dare to stand tall. This truth is dangerous because it exposes how much of our behavior is shaped not by integrity, but by fear of disapproval. It challenges the way we see virtue. It makes us ask hard questions. Am I being good, or am I being obedient? Am I being humble, or am I afraid to be seen? For those operating unconsciously from slave morality, strength is always something external, something to envy, something to criticize, something to fear. But for those who embrace master morality, strength is internal. It is the ability to shape your life with conviction, to take responsibility for your fate, to speak and act not from fear, but from vision. This is not about oppressing others. It's about not oppressing yourself. Too many people have mistaken silence for wisdom, passivity for virtue, and suffering for purpose. But you are not here to shrink. You are not here to please. You are here to live with your eyes wide open, to question what you've been told is good, and to decide, deliberately, what values you choose to live by. In today's world, the tension between these two moralities plays out in subtle ways. You see it when someone who is assertive is labeled too much, when a woman who leads with strength is called intimidating, when a man who chooses his own path is shamed for being selfish. These aren't judgments of character. They're defense mechanisms of a system that thrives when people stay small. And that system runs deep. It exists in our schools, our families, our workplaces, even our spiritual traditions. It teaches people to defer, to obey, to wait for recognition, rather than claim it. And it does this not through brute force, but through emotional conditioning. It trains you to feel guilty for wanting more. But Nietzsche invites us to consider a radical alternative. What if morality is not something imposed, but something created? What if your task in this life is not to submit to someone else's definition of good, but to forge your own? This is not easy. It requires courage. It requires self-honesty. It requires facing the fear that has kept you playing small and choosing to move anyway. And it starts with a question, a real question, one that cuts to the core. Whose morality are you living? If that question stings, sit with it. If it ignites something, good. That fire is not arrogance. It is clarity. You were not born to be a servant to someone else's rules. You were born with the power to shape your own. And the moment you begin to do that, not recklessly, but consciously, you step out of the shadow of slave morality and into the light of what Nietzsche called becoming. This is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you were before the world told you to be small. The war between master and slave morality is not out there. It is inside you. And it is fought in every moment where you choose either to shrink or to rise. The next time you're about to apologize for your brilliance, pause. The next time you silence your voice out of fear of judgment, ask yourself, who benefits when I play small? Then remember, morality is not a chain to carry, it is a weapon to forge. You are not here to be controlled, you are here to create. And your first act of creation is becoming ungovernable by fear. There's a dangerous myth that haunts many well-meaning people, the belief that power and goodness are incompatible, that if you want to stay kind, compassionate, or moral, then you must somehow reject ambition. You must avoid conflict. You must never wield power too directly. Power, in this myth, belongs to the corrupt. It is a dirty thing, and if you touch it, you'll lose your soul. But that myth has a cost. It keeps good people small. It keeps visionaries silent. It creates a world where the boldest are rarely the wisest, and the wisest rarely rise. What Nietzsche understood, what he whispered into the fabric of philosophy like a spark waiting to catch, is that power isn't evil, it's misunderstood. And for those who dare to see clearly, it becomes something sacred. Not a weapon for destruction, but a tool for liberation. The problem isn't power. The problem is how most people were taught to fear it. Power is simply the ability to move reality, to speak and be heard, to decide and act, to create and destroy. It is the force of will pressing against the inertia of the world. It doesn't have a moral value attached to it. It only reveals the moral structure of the person who holds it. Friedrich Nietzsche didn't glorify cruelty. He warned against the unconscious worship of weakness. And in that spirit, he offered something deeper than mere dominance. A vision of power that is not ruthless, but relentless. Let's be clear about what this means. Ruthlessness is chaotic. It cuts for the sake of cutting. It's a reaction born of fear, insecurity, or ego. The ruthless person takes, manipulates, dominates, often to fill a void they do not understand. Their power is brittle. It feeds on control, and without it, they collapse. But relentless power, strategic power, is different. It is not fueled by fear. It is grounded in clarity. It does not dominate for the sake of pride, but acts with purpose. It is not loud or theatrical. It moves with precision, not panic. Relentless power is the power of the storm that arrives without apology, but leaves behind new ground to grow. To live with this kind of power, you must first unlearn your fear of your own strength. You must stop mistaking hesitation for humility. You must stop outsourcing your choices to the comfort of being liked. You don't have to become cold, but you do have to become clear. That means learning when to speak, not just when it's safe. Learning when to say no, not just when others will understand. Learning when to lead, even if no one follows at first. Because real power often moves ahead of the crowd, not behind it. This kind of power requires what we can call controlled ruthlessness. The ability to do what must be done without being consumed by the act. It means facing discomfort, confrontation, even disapproval without shrinking from it. It's the strength to act not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. But how do we do that without becoming manipulative or losing touch with our empathy? The answer is not to suppress empathy. It's to make it strategic. Strategic empathy is the ability to read the room, to understand motives, to anticipate the moves of others, not for the sake of control, but for the sake of conscious action. It is emotional intelligence with boundaries. It is knowing who you're dealing with and adjusting without losing yourself. When you combine controlled ruthlessness with strategic empathy, you get the most effective kind of power. Not reckless, not reactive, but rooted in awareness. It is the power that builds, that sets vision, that cuts when it must, but never out of malice. Think of the entrepreneurs who build revolutionary companies, not just for profit, but from a desire to change how people live. Think of the leaders who speak hard truths in a room full of comfort seekers, because the truth needs a voice. Think of the creators who stop asking for permission and begin building what they've never seen. None of them are passive, and none of them wait for approval. They act, relentlessly, with clarity and direction, with a compass, not just a map. This is the kind of power Nietzsche pointed toward when he spoke of the will to power. Not a hunger for domination, but a hunger for self-direction, for shaping life instead of being shaped by it. But there is a price. The price of this path is often isolation. You may walk alone before others understand. You may lose the comfort of being universally liked. You may be seen as too much, too intense, too confident. But those who fear your clarity were never going to build with you anyway. If you're willing to pay that price, you gain something rare, the ability to move through the world with integrity and fire at the same time. That's not the path of the ruthless. That's the path of the relentless. So how do you cultivate this in yourself? You begin small. You build the muscle. Start with micro decisions. Say no to what drains you, even if it disappoints someone. Speak up when your voice trembles. Hold your boundary without guilt. Ask for what you want without apology. And perhaps most important of all, act on what you know is right, even if no one claps. Because power isn't given, it's claimed. And it is not claimed by those who wait. In a world where the loud often drown out the wise, where charm is confused with character, and manipulation hides behind ambition, your clarity becomes your compass. You don't need to become a tyrant to rise, but you do need to stop being timid. You don't need to crush others to move forward, but you do need to stop abandoning yourself to make them comfortable. This is what Nietzsche meant by rising beyond convention, by living not as a reaction to the world, but as a force within it. Strategic power is not about having control over others, it's about having control over yourself. And when that kind of power meets the world, unchained from fear, rooted in truth, expressed with calm fire, it doesn't just succeed, it transforms. That's your invitation, not to be ruthless, but to be relentless. At some point, if you're honest with yourself, you realize that life is not just about survival. It's not just about navigating power structures, mastering strategic thinking, or protecting your energy. At some point, it becomes about one thing: creation. Not creation for applause. Not creation to prove something, but creation because there is something inside you that refuses to remain dormant any longer. This is where Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch, the overman, enters, not as a cold philosophical ideal, but as a living, breathing possibility. It's not about becoming superhuman. It's about becoming yourself, unchained from imitation, no longer reacting to the world, but shaping it. It's about shifting from reaction to authorship, from fear to expression, from avoidance to legacy. Until now, perhaps you've spent much of your life managing other people's expectations. Maybe you've tried to earn your worth by being useful, obedient, kind, careful. You've reacted to systems, to hierarchies, to rules someone else wrote long before you arrived. But what if you stopped reacting altogether? What if you became the one who writes? To become the builder is to step into a different mode of being. It requires a seismic shift from defending your place in the world to crafting your vision of it. And this shift is not merely intellectual. It is spiritual. It is cellular. You don't just think differently. You walk differently. You begin to speak, act, decide from a place that is no longer seeking permission. You are no longer waiting for the world to tell you who to be. You are telling it who you are becoming. Nietzsche wrote, "What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not a goal." In that one sentence lies the invitation of a lifetime. You are not here to arrive. You are here to build as you cross. To create yourself not as a final product, but as an ongoing act of will, forged and reforged in the fire of experience, struggle, and self-overcoming. But how do you do this? Where do you start when everything around you still demands that you conform? You start with the realization that you are allowed to create values. The ones handed to you by family, religion, media, culture were designed for obedience, not evolution. To become the builder, you must challenge them, not with anger but with clarity. You ask yourself, what do I truly value? Not what I was taught to value. Not what earns me approval. What does my soul know to be right, even when it defies the script? This is where you begin to craft your own commandments, not from ego, but from depth. These are not rigid laws. They are living truths. They emerge from your pain, your joy, your failures, your longings. They are shaped by the storms you've survived and the beauty you've witnessed. And once written, they become your compass. But it cannot stop there. Values without action are decoration. To build, you must do something most people avoid their entire lives. You must start. Not tomorrow. Not when it's perfect. Not when you have more time, money, confidence, clarity. Now. Start something that demands your courage. Something that risks being misunderstood. Something that could fail and still be worth doing. Maybe it's a business, a book, a piece of art, a platform, a movement, a body of work. Or maybe it's simply the version of yourself you've been postponing out of fear that you're not ready. The builder doesn't wait for conditions to be ideal. They create conditions by showing up again and again with no promise that it will work out, only the certainty that not trying would be the greater death. This is what separates those who live reactively from those who live generatively. The reactive person is always waiting for the right time, the right support, the right signal from the world that says, now you may begin. The builder understands that no such moment exists. The world doesn't give you permission. You take it by acting. But perhaps the most radical part of being a builder is this. You no longer define success by outcomes. You begin to define success by alignment. Am I living in integrity with my truth? Am I building something that reflects who I am becoming, not just who I've been? Am I leaving behind a trail of courage, not just achievements? This shift rewires your relationship to failure. It's no longer something to avoid. It becomes a teacher. It becomes the mark of those who tried and tried fully. You begin to see that the real tragedy is not failing. The real tragedy is becoming a ghost of yourself because you were too afraid to be misunderstood. Nietzsche warned against this kind of ghost life. He believed that the individual who conforms for the sake of comfort loses the very fire that makes life worth living. The Übermensch was not someone who had all the answers. It was someone who kept creating new ones, who refused to live on borrowed meaning, who made life an art, not a checklist. And art, true art, is always an act of risk. It cannot be manufactured safely. It emerges from tension, from doubt, from stepping out onto the edge where most people turn back. So ask yourself, what are you building? Not someday, but now. What would happen if you stopped seeking approval and started building your truth? What if the fear of judgment became the fuel for authenticity? What if you decided that the path of creation, no matter how lonely or difficult, is still better than a life of silent compromise? Because here's what most people never tell you. The moment you begin to build something real, something with your fingerprints on it, something that contains your story, your vision, your scars, it changes you. You stop needing to be understood. You stop chasing certainty. You begin to walk with something ancient in your chest, a quiet knowing that you are doing the work your soul came here to do. And that kind of person doesn't just live, they ignite. The builder becomes a beacon, not because they try to be, but because the act of building itself sends a signal. I am alive. I am here. I am creating what I wish existed. Not everyone will understand you, but those who do, they'll never forget you. So if you're waiting for a sign, this is it. Not to be perfect, not to have it all figured out, but to begin. To move from reaction to creation, to write your own commandments, to commit to one bold, meaningful creation that demands everything you've got and gives something back you never expected. The world doesn't need more performers. It needs more builders. And if you're reading this, maybe you've been one all along. You just needed the silence to break. There's a question that silently haunts anyone who begins to awaken to power. Is it possible to rise without becoming what I despise? We've all seen what power can do to a person, how it twists egos, distorts values, burns bridges, how it turns once pure intentions into ambition for its own sake. And so many who are deeply reflective, deeply empathetic, deeply good, pull back. They silence their power before it speaks. They fear becoming corrupted, so they choose invisibility. They equate strength with arrogance, clarity with coldness, and boldness with betrayal. But Nietzsche offers another way. He shows us that this dichotomy, either become ruthless or stay righteous, is a false one. It's not a moral truth, it's a psychological trap. You see, the danger is not power. The danger is unconscious power. Power that has no purpose, no principle, no anchor. That kind of power devours. But power that is claimed with consciousness, wielded with integrity, and directed with intention, that kind of power transforms. It liberates not only the one who holds it, but everyone around them. This is the third path. Not submission, not domination, but sovereignty. It is the path of those who choose to lead without oppressing, who speak truth without seeking applause, who build systems, ideas, and lives that do not reflect the games they inherited, but the values they chose. It's the path of those who learn the rules of the game, not to cheat, but to change them. The truth is, our culture often frames power as either evil or inaccessible. If you're too ambitious, people will say you've sold out. If you're too quiet, they'll call you weak. So we live in a world where many people are stuck in a middle ground, afraid to claim power, but frustrated that they don't have it. They end up resenting those who rise and resenting themselves for staying small. But there is another way. You can rise with your soul intact. You do this not by avoiding conflict, but by becoming fluent in it. Not by pleasing everyone, but by being honest with yourself. Not by trying to be harmless, but by learning how to become powerful and principled at the same time. This is not easy. It demands that you stop outsourcing your integrity, that you stop needing others to approve your every move. It demands that you become a deep listener to your own conscience and a fearless architect of your own behavior. And perhaps most importantly, it asks you to stop waiting for the world to be fair. You must create fairness where you can. You must act where others hesitate. Because morality is not weakness when it's paired with strategy. It becomes strength of the highest order. You will be tested. Not once, but often. Power brings options, and options expose values. You'll have to decide, will I take the shortcut, or will I build something lasting? Will I manipulate to win, or will I create to inspire? Will I lead from fear, or from vision? These questions don't go away as you rise. They multiply. And so the deeper your power grows, the deeper your self-awareness must become. Power is not just about what you can do. It's about what you choose not to do, because you understand the long game. Because you know that legacy matters more than optics, that creation matters more than conquest, that truth matters more than popularity. This is why Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch is so revolutionary. Because the Übermensch doesn't seek power to dominate others. He seeks power to master himself. He is beyond morality only because he has outgrown the need to be controlled by external validation. His compass is internal. His will is self-authored. His life is a living expression of his deepest values, not a reaction to the world's demands. And that's the real lesson here. Power is not something to avoid or fear. It is something to understand, refine, and align with who you truly are. So what's the lesson? What can we take from all this? It's this: you do not need to become ruthless to succeed. But you do need to stop being passive. The world isn't fair, and it's not supposed to be. It is not your job to wait for justice. It is your responsibility to bring it, to act with courage, to rise with clarity, to love with boundaries, to lead with vision, and to build with fire. You can't wait for someone else to do that for you. Because the systems we live in are not designed to reward silence. They reward action. Strategic, conscious, intentional action. And it is those who learn to navigate power while staying rooted in truth that become the builders of the next world. So here's how you apply this now. First, audit where you've been giving away your power, out of fear, politeness, or conditioning. Identify one place where you've stayed silent when your voice was needed. Then, speak, not with anger, but with truth. Second, choose one part of your life, work, relationships, purpose, and ask, what would it look like if I brought my full power here? Not to control, but to create. Not to impress, but to lead. And finally, remember this. Kindness is not weakness. Fairness is not naivety. But strategy is not betrayal. When you marry values with vision, when you walk with both fire and grace, you become unstoppable. Not because the world bends to you, but because you no longer bend to it. You rise, not by stepping on others, but by refusing to stay beneath your potential. That's the third path. It is narrow. It is hard. It is worth everything. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think about power? Is it dangerous, or is it simply a mirror of who we are? How have you seen it used wisely or destructively in your own life? What does rising without losing your soul look like to you? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's build a conversation that isn't afraid of truth, depth, or contradiction. And if this resonated with you, if it challenged you, moved you, made you rethink your relationship with power, then subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Your support gives this message life. Your presence here matters. And together, we're just getting started.